Hmm? Ah!
The crazy part about this lifestyle is I can go home and then I go to like Trader Joe's or the wherever I shop, and nobody knows who I am, and I love that.
Podcast Junkies, episode number 150, another milestone, 150 episodes. Yep. That's me exhaling and taking a moment to think about 150 episodes. That's crazy. It's been an amazing, amazing journey. I've had so many fantastic experiences as a result of the show, conversations, connections, friendships, stories heard. It's just been an amazing ride so far, and I couldn't have done it without you, specifically you listening right now to get me to this point, because as we all know, for those of us that podcast on a regular basis, if we don't have our listeners, then we're essentially just spitting in the wind. As much as we would love to think that we would do this as a passion project for this long, it's really been your support week in, week out, your comments, just your activity, your hugs in person, your high fives, your rocking of the Podcast Junkies t-shirt on social media, in person. Everything you've done has not gone unnoticed by me, and incredibly, incredibly appreciated. So it's important sometimes to celebrate the small wins and the big wins, and 150 seemed like a nice milestone to just take this time and thank you specifically for listening. I know there's been weeks where I haven't podcasted or I haven't released an episode, but I'm specifically thinking of you when I get back in the saddle, and ensure that I keep producing content that is inspiring you. You know, I'm finding new podcasters from different places, and I'm happy to see that their content and their message is resonating with you. So thank you so much for being with me along this journey, whether this is your first episode or your 150th. It's been an awesome ride, and it will continue to be so. So in the honor of celebrating, I thought it would be nice to have Pat Flynn on the show, and we were able to make it work, and he was gracious enough with his time. Pat is important, I think, for me, because he's one of the podcasters that inspired me at New Media Expo, and it's been interesting to think about him being one of the earliest ones that I listened to, and to now have the opportunity to spend some quality time with him. We kept running into each other at podcasting conferences, as you might imagine, but it was actually at a speakers conference, Advance Your Reach, in Colorado Springs, where he was a judge, and I actually made it to the final round, the final 12 of a speak-off. And so it was a bit surreal to talk about me speaking and this topic of finding my voice and how I've built my podcasting business, and Pat Flynn was there as the judge, and then we got to speak a little bit in the green room afterwards and hang out at that night. So it was nice because we got to connect at a more personal level, and that's when I really felt like it was the right time to invite him on. Because as you know, I like to have in-depth conversations, and this one was no different. And it was just really nice to have that face-to-face time with him. We did it on Skype, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of nuggets in here, as there always are when you talk to someone like Pat Flynn. So in this interview, we cover Pat's earliest memory of performing on a stage. He gives us his opinion on children using devices such as iPads. We got into a little side conversation because it's just something that's going to be here for a long time, this idea of technology and how people are using that as babysitters. And so he's got an interesting take on it. His recent foray into vlogging, and for those of you that don't know, that's video blogging, and it's where you record video diaries on YouTube. And he's at a trip or two overseas where he's done that, and those are actually fun to watch, so make sure you check those out. We talk about what he does to ensure he's always challenging himself and his network of peers, how he handles giving his time to his fan base at various events, and how he raises the bar every single time he performs. He even touches upon his most famous keynote speech. We have a little bit of fun and talk about the first time he ever hit the dance floor, and we also touch on his newest project, Build Your Own Brand. In case you missed last week's episode, that was another great episode from a veteran radio broadcaster, Mark Ramsey. And I know some people heard the episode and immediately started subscribing to Inside Psycho and Inside the Exorcist. These are shows that really go deep into the story behind the movie, as opposed to just being a fan cast. So we talk a little bit about the difference between those and why it's important to continue to push the envelope on what types of shows we can produce as podcasters. So I'm really excited about this 1-2 punch with what we had last week and Pat Flynn this week. As always, we do in-depth show notes. So if you're interested in any of the things we talked about, including links mentioned, we've got tweetables. If you want to share those are all available at podcastjunkies.com/150. So make sure you stay till the end of the episode. As always, even with celebration episodes, I'm going to share the retention hashtag. So one thing I didn't mention, if you're listening this far, is my name is Harry Duran, in case you're new. I always like to mention that. I always like to roll the welcome out to new listeners, because they may see Pat Flynn, and this may be the first time they check out something like Podcast Junkies. So welcome. Always nice to build the Podcast Junkies family. So enjoy my conversation with Pat. So Pat Flynn, host of Smart Passive Income, thank you so much for making it onto Podcast Junkies.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here.
So just a little bit of backstory. I always like to let people know how we connected. And obviously, I always see you at every podcast movement, videotaping. And you were a judge at Advance Your Reach, Pete Vargas's event earlier this year. And
yes,
so I was surprised to see you there. And I was happy enough to make it to the final 12. So
yeah, dude, that was an awesome competition. Great job again, by the way.
Thank you so much. I was super nervous. And I think the first time you're on a stage like that with that many people, I think they can sort of tell you what to prepare for, but until you're there, I think, and if you could maybe tell a little bit about your experiences on stages, and as they get progressively bigger, I imagine it becomes more, I don't know if it becomes more of a challenge, but what that feeling is like, because for me, it was just like, you think you know how you're going to respond until you're there, and just you get like a Cindy Brady moment.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing. I mean, it's not anything that's natural to most people. We don't just voluntarily go and find like hundreds of people to speak in front of. It's new for a lot of us, and as a result, we get nervous. We have this fear of the unknown. We have fear of people just staring at us. But obviously, when you're up there, you want people to pay attention to you. And the funny thing with me, the thing that changed my perspective on speaking was understanding that everybody in the audience wanted me to do well. They weren't there to pull me down. They wanted me to do well and give them an entertaining performance or speech. And I still get really nervous. I still want to throw up before I go on stage every single time. But to me, that's a good sign. It's a good sign, meaning I care about this event. I want to do a good job. I'll put in the work to make sure I do a good job, and I'm excited about it. If I wasn't nervous a little bit, then maybe I just, I'd have to question why I'm there.
What's your earliest recollection of a performance?
In my life?
Yeah, in your lifetime.
Oh gosh, we performed in kindergarten a play called Stone Soup, which required us to on stage basically create a soup that had a rock inside of it, and it was based on a story that we had read, and then we got to eat in soup afterwards.
And how'd the show go over?
I have no idea. I don't remember that much detail about it. I also remember I was a part of the 12 Days of Christmas during third grade.
Yeah.
My most performances in my life, however, were on the marching band field.
Yeah.
In a marching band, and that was it's very similar to speaking on stage, because you work really hard to memorize stuff and to kind of train and do a good performance, and then if you train long enough, you will just kind of be on autopilot when you're there and you're actually doing it. And I found that with all the rehearsal I do before I go on stage, after that first minute is over, just something takes me over and then just kind of allows me to go through whatever I need to do. And then all of a sudden at the end, I snap out of it and I'm back to reality. I'm like, oh, what just happened? And usually it goes pretty well. But the big difference is when you're on stage and speaking, it's just you. When you're in a marching band, your job is to not stand out and to just blend in with everybody else.
So have you thought about, with your kids, in terms of what you'd want them to get involved in? Are you the type who thinks they should find stuff on their own, or you just introduce a little bit at a time and see what takes?
I mean, my role as a parent, and me and April, my wife, we've talked about this, our role is to show our kids the options that are available to them and to show them that they can choose whatever path they want to choose based on their own superpowers, their likings, their talents, their skills, and just whatever their interests are. So we're not telling them what they should do in terms of career and things like that. Although I am, from an entrepreneur's perspective, training my son and daughter in a way to allow them to think like an entrepreneur, because I feel like that allows them to have the skills required to succeed no matter what path they choose in life. The idea of getting over that fear, getting to a point where you're comfortable speaking and sharing ideas with others, how to network and be involved with other people, how to empathize and serve others, like all those kinds of things that are good traits for entrepreneurs to have, then that can apply to any part of their life. And so that's kind of me and April's role, is to prepare them for that. And of course, if my son and daughter choose to be an entrepreneur, like, I would be super proud. But if they want to go and work for somebody else, I would be super proud too, because I would know that they would just crush it.
What scares you the most as a parent?
Missing out on time with them. And that's why I do what I do, because I want to spend as much time as possible with them. Wasting time doing things that are not helping or not worth doing. I find that sometimes, I've gotten a lot better at this, especially after meditating, that sometimes I'll catch myself in a YouTube rabbit hole, or I'll be like on Facebook for a half hour, and then I catch myself and I'm like, why am I here? And I always consider not just like the time I've wasted from like work that I should be doing, but the time that I'm wasting and taking away from the kids, because they're growing up so fast, and I know it's just going to be like a snap of my fingers, and they're going to be teenagers asking for the keys to the car, or who knows if they'll even be cars at that point, but they're going to be so on their own and independent that it's just, we're going to miss it. We're not going to have that like time like we do now. So I want to make sure to make the most of it.
I know you recently came back from Lisbon, and did you get to see? I know I've got some friends who are raised in Europe, and there's a different mindset in terms of how they raise kids. I don't know if you had a chance or you were there long enough to see some of that, but they're really well behaved, and that dichotomy you see is really strange when you see kids who are here, who are just the parents hand them the iPad, and that's like the babysitting device, as opposed to I don't know how hard it is, but I'm wondering if you think about those challenges, about how much is keep the digital away from them, as opposed to just learn what I tell you to do as a parent, because apparently you know best.
Yeah, well, I think I actually encourage them to get on those things. I don't just hand it to them if there's just random time. It's a reward for them for good behavior, or doing great things, or solving problems, not complaining and actually trying to solve whatever's going on. Like those kinds of actions, April and I pay attention to. And we reward the kids because we know they love the iPad. It does have an addictive nature, so we do have to control that. But I'm not against it, because we live in a digital age. And I think that the more they get access to those things and can figure those things out and have the freedom to do it, the better they're going to be off for the future. And so there's a line there, of course. And of course, we control which games they play. We have to approve everything, that sort of thing. But typically, my son and daughter play very educational games that allow them to get more involved with problem solving, building, design, coding, creativity, those kinds of things. So we're totally all for that. And we want to just make sure they're prepared for the world as it is now.
What's your earliest recollection of like digital, or I mean, for me, it's the Atari 2600. So that's probably dating myself, but
yeah, I mean, we had an Atari, but I remember Christmas. I think it was 1986, 1985. The Nintendo came out, and I was playing Super Mario, and I just fell in love with video games and Mario. And I remember a vivid memory of my mom wanting to play, and she's this like traditional Filipino woman with a heavy accent, and she started to play, and every time she would press the A button to make Mario jump, she would like lift the controller to like the controller itself would make Mario jump. And it was just so funny to watch her like do that. And I'm like, you don't have to do that, but she still does it, which is really funny. But yeah, that was my first taste of, video games, immersion, experience, that kind of thing. And then I got pretty obsessed with it. I actually played quite a bit of video games growing up. And I'm just thankful that when I read Elon Musk's biography, he talked about how important video games were for his progression. So I feel like that, it's okay, because it can teach you a number of things, especially related to problem solving, getting up and trying again, creative and innovative ways to solve problems, like those kinds of things. My most obsessive moments with video games was in high school, and I was actually in a Quake 2 clan. Okay. This was like a team that we created. It was a capture the flag team. These were people I met in the game. And then we had like practice, and we had battles with other teams, and it was good times. It was good times.
You still keep in touch with any of those folks?
No, not at all. No.
I'm sure they've probably seen you and they're like, is that the same Pat Flynn? That was
No, because we had aliases.
That's right. Okay.
My name, our team name had, everybody, like, so we had our acronym for our team name, which was BBH, and then the X, and then our little nicknames after it.
Yeah.
And so there was like BBH Macaroni, BBH, Gearhead, and then mine was BBH Lubricant because I was so fast and slippery with the flag. It wasn't anything dirty, but because I was just so fast, nobody could catch me. That's why I was Lubricant. Although maybe there was a double meaning. I don't know.
Did you run track in high school?
No, I didn't run track.
Okay.
Just I was inside the track on the football field with the marching band, but no, I didn't run track.
Were you? Have you always been like a tech head? Because I know you're doing the vlogging now, and I've seen you play around with the Muse, and it seems like you're always like trying new toys.
Yeah, I like toys. I like electronic toys and things like that. So yeah, all those things. I mean, my big thing when I was growing up was RC cars and little Tamiya cars that you could build with motors, and you can upgrade little parts to them and race them and try to get a faster time. And when the Walkman and the CD player came out, like I was all over that stuff. Headphones, like just everything. Yeah, I'm totally obsessed with that stuff.
I noticed in some of the vlogs, I imagine it was just you there. So there were some shots of like you at the end of a tunnel. So I guess you were placing the camera on a tripod.
That was fun and interesting. I don't know if you've seen the show. It's not Man versus Wild, but there's another one that's similar to it on Discovery where, it's Survivor Man.
Yeah.
And he is just out there literally on his own, but he has these really great camera angles where he is putting down a camera, walking, and then walking all the way back to get that shot. And so it's exactly the same thing. And it was very odd because especially when you're in a crowded space and people see you like walking and then coming back and then walking again and picking a camera up, it's kind of strange. I was a little bit conscious about that, but then I realized like, hey, I'm in another country.
Yeah.
These people have no idea who I am, and it doesn't matter. They're never going to think about this again. So let's just keep doing it. And I got some pretty good shots doing that.
Yeah, it's funny because it's the one in your room, and it's you asleep in bed.
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody, like if you really think about how it was filmed, it's like not real, right? But I slept and I got up and I like filmed my alarm going off. Like that was all staged, but it told a story. Those are tools to help tell the story. And
has the vlogging always been consistent? It seems like lately you've given it sort of double down on it, and maybe
I've never done it before until that trip. And it was because I started to watch a lot of other people's vlogs, and I just needed an excuse to get excited about video again. And so I decided, hey, why not? What better time than to document my very first trip to Europe in my life than through sort of a vlog and when I speak at this event. And so I did that, and I had a lot of time to edit because there was a very long plane ride to Europe, and I just had a lot of time to myself while I was there. So I had a really, really good time. It kind of sparked that creativity again for things like video. And actually, because of the vlog, I started to do more research into YouTube, and now I'm actually going to go a lot heavier on YouTube, not just vlogging, but tutorial style, how-to content as well in 2018. So we're pushing a lot of effort and putting a lot of investment into YouTube in lieu of the blogs that we had on SPI, on Smart Passive Income. So we're actually not going to start by writing blog posts anymore. All the written content on the site is actually going to stem from the videos that we create. It's not going to be word-for-word transcription or subtitle, but it's going to be, more multimedia experience, and the text will be as a result of the video and the stories that we tell.
Yeah, from a repurposing content, it really makes sense because you just have to produce the content once, and then you could stream it out into all these different formats.
You can, yeah. Although you gotta be careful when you do that, because say, for example, you do a video and there's a lot of visual things in there. You even say, "Hey, look at this" or "Look at that."
Mm-hmm.
If you just take the transcript of that in an audio podcast, it's not going to be very nice to listen to that. You're going to feel left out. You're going to have people not subscribe to the show or unsubscribe. And then if it goes into a blog post, there's some work that needs to be done to make it really read like a blog post and have it be more scannable, which is what blog readers do versus a podcast listener who listens to every word versus a video guy or person who, is a very visual learner.
Have you had any conversations with some of the bigger vloggers? Amy Schmidt comes to mind, for example. And I'm wondering if there's something specific about the vlogging medium that you have to be considerate of?
Well, I spoke to Amy and several other people, not just vloggers, but other influential people in the YouTube space. I'm actually headed to a conference this week called Vid Summit.
Oh, yeah, that's here in LA.
Yeah, it's in LA, and I'm there to actually meet a lot of those people.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of stopping by.
Yeah, it's. I'm just excited to get to know that crowd. It's a brand new space for me. I almost feel like I'm starting from scratch in it, even though I have a YouTube channel and there are a large number of subscribers there. They are not very consistent in listening because I haven't been consistent in producing videos. So that's going to change for sure, and we can hopefully get those numbers back up. I'm also taking a lot of advice from a guy named Brian Dean, who is at backlinko.com, and he's been very heavy in YouTube search engine and also SVO, which is suggested video optimization, which is where most views on YouTube come from the suggested videos. So learning a lot, and it's brand new. But again, because it's video, I'm excited. I have a great studio here that we just bought in San Diego, 900 square feet of video recording stuff, and a videographer that lives near me too. So it should be cool.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having the right team around you? Because I know over the years, you've grown your team significantly, and I've seen a couple of the posts you've made about the sessions you have. And as some folks who start to grow, myself included, start to think about loyalty, people who have your best interest in heart, and people who really are there to support you. Like, what's your mindset, and what lessons have you learned as you've built your team out?
Well, I used to do everything myself. I did everything myself for like 5 years. That includes web development, writing, web design, Photoshop. I did everything myself, and that was partly because I just felt proud of myself for being able to say that I did it all myself. But it eventually got to a point where I was either gonna burn out, or just get bored, or not be able to grow. I would just kind of stay stagnant. So I really had to make some changes. I was very inspired by a conference I went to. I went to Michael Hyatt's platform conference, which doesn't happen anymore. But what caught my eye and attention there was that whole conference. It was so beautifully run. But the crazy thing was Michael Hyatt, who put on the conference, he was sitting in the audience the whole time. His whole team was the one that actually streamlined and put everything together. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like, I want something that could allow me to do that. Like, that's so eye-opening to me. And so after talking to him and a number of other people, I started to eventually experiment with what it was like to hire others for certain roles and positions. Eventually hired out people to edit my podcast, eventually found people who were going to help me project manage and do all these other things, editorial managing. And it's just been beautiful because now I have all this extra time to not just focus on the things that I only should be focusing on, but also being able to spend more time with the family and thinking bigger and doing other things that are fun. Networking, all the things that I know I should be doing versus a lot of these other things that I was doing that weren't really anything that I couldn't hand off to anybody else. In terms of finding the right people, I mean, really it's about getting that right vibe and finding people who are really skilled and talented. That combination is key. There can be people who are super skilled and talented who you just don't have a vibe with. That's not going to work. But at the same time, there can be people who you just have an amazing relationship with, but if they can't uphold their end of the bargain and they don't have that specialty that you really need, well, then it's not going to work either. So it does take some time, and I would just recommend starting small and then growing kind of outside of that.
Any mistakes you'd say you made, or something to look out for so people don't make the same mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that I was able to do everything myself initially. I mean, I'm glad I did that. I should have hired out sooner, but I'm thankful that I knew and know how to do some of these things because, one of the biggest questions I get from people who are starting a podcast, because I have a podcasting course, poweruppodcasting.com, and one of the most common questions I get is, hey, can I just hire this stuff out to somebody like right away? And I'm like, you could, but I would recommend doing it on your own first for a few reasons. One, so you can just appreciate this craft of podcasting, right? And just to kind of get to know what it's like first. But also so that when you do eventually get to the point where you hire somebody to do that for you, if they were to go away, then you're screwed unless you know how to like pick up the slack as you are looking for somebody else. Like, I've heard nightmare stories of people hiring companies to help put on their podcast, and then that company folds or they move on to other things, and then that podcast is no longer because of that one person or that team who just eventually gave up, and that person who is the host of the show doesn't know how to do it, and they're scrambling, and it's just a nightmare. So I would recommend doing most of what you can do at first, even though you could hire those things out, so you can appreciate it and have your own specific way and style of doing it. But then hand them off, and then just thank that person like crazy because you know exactly what it is they're doing for you.
Yeah, it's good advice. And you work a lot with, you write everything out, SOPs and procedures, and like the team knows exactly what they're doing?
Yeah, it's all. I mean, any repetitive tasks
Yeah.
have a to-do list and a list of a checklist, and that's really important just so we can make sure we can focus our higher level thinking and decision making to things that require that. If we ever have to waste time thinking, oh, what was it that I was supposed to do again like I did last week? Well, then we're losing. We need to have these systems in place so we just, boom, can go down the line and then focus our decision-making efforts into bigger items.
And is the team that are the folks who are, I guess you would consider your peers in this space? I know that you had a lot of people that you started with and that you have masterminds with. Mm-hmm. Is that remain the same, or are you continually looking to sort of up that as well? So you're, like they say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like what are you doing to ensure that you're always being challenged yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always trying to build relationships with new people who are in spaces where I want to be. This is why I'm going to this conference related to YouTube and videos, because that's my next move, and I want to know people there. And I will not be the smartest guy in the room by far. So that's why I want to put myself in those places. But my more immediate group and network, I have a couple groups of people who I meet with weekly in a mastermind group, and we're all kind of in and around the same level, but we all push each other. And that's, I think, really important. We've been together for 6 or 7 years, meeting weekly, and that's so important to me. However, I am also actively just trying to build relationships, reach out and get coaching now from people who are at higher levels. I'm getting coaching now from Pete Vargas. I'm getting coaching not directly, but indirectly through people like Shalene Johnson and Ramit Sethi, Tim Ferriss, those kinds of people too. With Tim, we're not even having conversations, but I'm paying very close attention to what he's doing and analyzing it and trying to see if there's anything I can utilize as inspiration for my own stuff too.
Yes, he seems like to take that concept of the crash test dummy, which is something you've talked about as well. Just always, he does the skin grafts and he does some crazy stuff. I don't know if you're at that level, but he does some.
There won't be any skin grafts happening here, that's for sure.
What are you doing that's? I know you mentioned the vlogging, but what else are you doing that's scaring you in a good way, because it's kind of pushing you out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, so I recently held my first podcasting live workshop here in San Diego, and it was 16 people who paid a large sum of money to come, and I knew that it was my responsibility to make sure that they got their money's worth. And I'm thankful to say that they all said that they would have paid more for it, and it's not a cheap ticket either. I mean, I charged $3,000 for this thing, and my goal is to help them go through the information I have in the digital course that I have in just 2 days, with very high touch, very much just an experience to go along with the content. And what really came out of that was also very interesting, was we all now have like this friendship together that we could take and move forward with this. Networks were created, partnerships were created there too. It was very scary because I'd never done anything like that before. And, running my own mini event for 2 days. I've run events with other people, sort of like side by side with them, but never on my own, never for that ticket price, never dealing with having people fly in and then hotels. There's just a lot of things that go with that. And so I was scared. I did it for a couple of reasons. One, many people were asking for something like that. So I put up a sales page and just kind of saw if people were going to buy. And yes, they did buy. I actually had to close the cart early because I didn't want it to get too big. But secondly, I wanted to test it to see if it was something I wanted to do, because I had no idea if it was something that is something I would want to devote more time to in the future. Now, I can say, based on the results of this, and now that we have content done and all the worksheets already printed out and stuff, like, it's going to be very easy to replicate if I wanted to. And I'm definitely going to be doing that again. I'm going to be doing quarterly, one per quarter next year, and likely at a higher price point. So I'm really excited about that. And it's still scary to think about that people are coming and I have to take care of them. But I also know that I won't not let them down, or I won't let them down.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I'll be able to provide a good experience. So that's been the new thing. A lot of these more higher touch kind of trainings, the online courses, I'm still adding new courses to my library, and I'm excited because people are really, really enjoying them. But every time I come out with some new one, I always wonder in my head, hey, what if this one doesn't live up to the expectations? What if this one is the flop? What if this one doesn't do well? What if this one doesn't actually serve my audience? But luckily, I've always been somebody who takes a lot of good care of my people, whether in person or online. So far, I haven't had that.
And you recently sold from stage for the first time as well.
I did. Yes, this was in March of 2017, earlier this year. That was actually the beta version of my podcasting course, and it was by request from the founder of this event, Marketing Impact Academy by Chalene Johnson. And she asked me to come and speak, and I said yes. And she said, "Oh, well, I'll allow you to speak if you do one thing for me." And I said, "What's that?" And she's like, "You have to sell something to my audience on stage." And she knew that I just would not, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
But she asked me anyway because she knew it would be a good experience for me. And I'm so thankful she did. Now, initially, I didn't have anything to sell because the only course I had sold at the time is called Smart from Scratch, which is still available. But it's for beginners, people who are just looking to find what niche or avenue they want to go down and validating and testing that model. That's not what Shalene's audience needed. So when I asked her, she said, "My audience would love a podcasting course. They would just totally buy that from you." And then so she trained me, and we got on the phone a few times, and she trained me through what it was like to sell on stage, the formula for doing so, and I did it. And as soon as I mentioned, after about 50 minutes of content on stage at her event, and mind you, there's 800 people in the audience at this thing. I mean, I'm just super nervous, and the lights are shining on me. I can't see anybody. Just like I felt like it was in a movie. But I knew I was coming to that point where I was going to be sharing this product and talking about it. And most people know me for being not super selly. And so I mentioned this name of the product and why it existed. And as soon as I mentioned that I had a product for sale, I had people applauding. Like people were clapping. There was an applause as a result of me sharing that I had a product to sell, which was very surprising. I did not expect that. But then as I was going through the price juxtaposition, which is when you compare what other offerings are out there and how expensive they are versus what it is that you have to offer, even before I shared my final price point, people were getting up out of their chairs, going to the back of their room, filling out these forms with their information on it, and buying my course. And it was just the most incredible thing to see that happen. And I went backstage after it was over, and we had collected over 160 students at that point for a digital course that was hundreds of dollars. And I was just like, I was almost on the brink of tears because I couldn't believe what had just happened. And I was so worried that I was going to feel icky and go home and want to take a bath and just be like, ugh, like I feel so slimy right now. But I had never felt better. And what Chalene taught me is that you can sell and serve at the same time. And many times you should, in order to sell something. And so I was backstage, and she just gave me the most amazing compliments. I actually have, like, on my wall here, she wrote down a number of the things that I did great. And I have it here just to remind me every day about, like, some of the amazing things that I didn't even know I could do. So that was a great experience. And then that led to working with those students to pass that course. Most of them got their podcast up on iTunes. And then I collected feedback and testimonials to make the course even better for the public launch. And then I did the public launch in June, and that just crushed it. We did over $300,000 in sales, and it just blew me away that, I'm like, oh, I should have done this sooner because people have been waiting for it. But you can't say that. I mean, I'm so happy I did it, and I'm just so thankful that the students in there are taking action. And there's this now community, this family that is underneath the Power Up Podcasting brand. And every time we go to office hours, there's like dozens of people in there asking great questions and making progress. We had somebody yesterday who launched, and she is now in the top 80 of all podcasts in the world.
Nice.
There's been other people. This woman in Australia, her name's Sophie. She's gotten on the homepage of iTunes in Australia and #1 in her category. And these are people who are using these strategies that I feel my unique take on the podcasting world is this sort of marketing aspect. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there about how to set up your show, but not how to get found. And so, you know, the launch, the post-launch, machine that you create in terms of listeners and things like that, like that's what my specialty is. So I'm thankful that people are taking action. And of course, I expected it. There are results.
So do you find as you get bigger, as your brand gets bigger, as you start appearing more places, as you start having more products, is there a challenge with how much of you're making accessible to the students? I imagine everyone that buys your stuff wants to have interaction with you, and obviously it comes at different price points. Yeah,
I mean, it can be challenging. In the beginning, before I was organized, it was definitely a challenge because I'm a yes person. I want to say yes to everybody. But first of all, I realized that there are ways to serve everybody, but not one at a time. So that's why the group office hours are really important. And those are run through Zoom and then connected also to the Facebook group through Zoom, which can allow you to stream to Facebook, which is nice. So I'm able to cover hundreds of people during those hours and answer questions. And if somebody has a question, most likely other people have that same question too. So I'm able to address them even before they ask that question. And that's really nice because it's at a certain time for a certain amount of time on a certain day, so I know and I can schedule exactly when that happens. And then outside of that, people aren't expecting me to be involved. However, I do get myself involved if there's some free time. I do schedule in some sort of bonus time to be in the forums and in the Facebook group to answer questions, and people are always pretty surprised that I'm there. So that adds sort of another flavor of just, care. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in high demand for sure, but I also know how much my time is worth and how to best utilize my time to serve the most people as possible.
Do you think about, I saw that video you posted of your son and that moment where you were able to show him the book. Mm-hmm. And he was like, can I go tell people to buy the book now or something like that?
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was really cool. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of like the balance of the time? Because, you obviously just traveled to Lisbon and you're going to all these conferences, but do you think about that consciously, about family time versus time spent on your business?
All the time. Yeah. All the time. So there's a few things to go along with that. First of all, they don't always have to be completely separate. I love combining the two. I love inviting my kids into my office and playing with the microphone, touching the buttons, like messing with the knobs. If you have a mixer, make sure you take a picture of your knobs so you can put them back to where they were. But I love to get them involved because I want them to see that business and this stuff that I'm doing, entrepreneurship, is something that can bring us closer together. Not like, oh no, daddy's going to work and I won't see him forever. When I go and speak at a conference, I'll tell them about it. I'll show them pictures. I've even invited my son to come to one or two and see what it was like, and he even got on stage once. So I try to mix them as much as I can in a conscious way that allows them to get excited about it and to allow us to kind of grow all together. We went to Australia recently to speak I went to Australia to speak at the Pro Blogger conference, the PB event, and I was able to invite my family with me. So we all got to go and be a part of that experience too together, which is nice. The kids are a little bit older now, so that is definitely more possible as they get older. But beyond that, I mean, I think really, in my mind, I realize that it can never be perfectly balanced. That when you think of a scale, it's only perfectly balanced at one moment across that whole spectrum, right? When there's perfect weight on both sides, and that's it. Now, if you shoot for that, you're going to be disappointed your whole life because that's just one moment of your entire life, or in terms of scale on that back and forth scale. But so what I try to do is just make sure that I know that it's going to go one way and then it's going to go another way and it's going to go this way and then that way, but also realize that I just don't want it to teeter so far over to one side that if I go one side for a while, I know that I have to balance it out by going another side for another while in a separate way. So for example, if I'm going through a big launch, for example, which does take up a ton of time, I'm in my office and I'm responding to questions and I'm live on Facebook and I'm doing all these other things for launches. I mean, I might have a 60 to 80 hour week. But then I also know on the other side of that, I'm going to make sure that I communicate with my family that after the launch, this is how we're going to spend time together, and I'm not going to think about work because I have the systems in place that includes tools and the team that will make sure things keep running. And so that allows the balance to come back to as close to the middle as possible, but it's never going to be like that. And of course, things blend into each other every once in a while in ways that you don't really want them to. And again, that's just something I have to expect and I have to make wise decisions for in terms of, what is my priority right now. And, one thing I realized that my assistant taught me, especially related to email, because I used to reply to emails super fast and people were always very impressed. But she told me that, hey, you know what? Even if you went 48 hours without answering an email, nothing's going to break. Yeah. Like your business is still going to be up. A person might not even expect you to answer until a week. So we did this experiment once where I didn't answer any emails for a certain period of time. And then she's like, see, nothing broke. Everything's fine. You're still making money. Your systems are going. Your funnels are working. And I was like, oh, this is good. Like, I don't have to stress out as much as I think I do.
Do you still keep in touch? And in terms of, I'm wondering about like friends you've had, back when you were an architect, and if they've seen you, because there's this idea of like pruning your friends. I've been talking to a couple of my friends, as we're growing our businesses, and I'm wondering if you've had that experience where you feel like you feel the need, like you've outgrown friends or you've outgrown relationships you've had. If you've gone through anything like that recently?
No, I mean, I don't really like that word outgrown. It almost makes it seem like I'm better or bigger than them, and it's definitely not like that. I think we've just gone separate ways, if you will. For a lot of my friends from high school and in architecture, like, we have conversations every once in a while, and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter make it easy for us to have mini conversations every now and then. And we check up on each other every once in a while. I think that's what a good friend does. But then we also realize that we each have our own things to do. And, then on top of just careers, there's family versus somebody who may be single. I mean, we're going to have different kinds of conversations, and it's just sometimes we just don't align. So a lot of those friends, we just don't have anything to talk about anymore. And that's okay. I mean, I'm sad about that, but I can't and don't want to force anything. And then through this new career and being an entrepreneur, I've been able to gain some more amazing friends that I would have never met otherwise. So I have to realize that there is sort of this, again, similar yin and yang kind of thing that happens in all aspects of life, including friendships. But no, I never consider that I've outgrown anybody. And I haven't heard, at least, I mean, I don't know why anybody would tell me this. Maybe they're saying this, but I don't think anybody has ever said anything like, oh, Pat's too big-headed, or, I don't like that guy anymore, or nothing like that, because I always try to stay grounded and I don't show off. I just try to be as helpful as possible. And, I have offered to help other friends who have expressed the idea of wanting to be an entrepreneur, and I've tried to help them. And sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. All I can do is just share information and see if they take action or not. And if they want help, I'll give it to them if I have time. So, yeah.
Are you conscious? I noticed a lot when you're at the bigger conferences like Podcast Movement, that you have people that are your fans, that come up to you, but does it weigh on you a little bit, like, because you have to have some sort of circle or some sort of some type of mechanism to figure out, or filtering system, I would imagine, because if not, like, everyone's just going to come demanding your attention, and obviously you can't give it to everyone, especially during these live events. So I'm wondering, as you've become more visible in the online space and digital space, if there's anything you've done to sort of, address that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just know that there are certain times when I'm at those events, for example, after I speak or when I go into the hallways, like, I'm going to get mobbed by my fans. Yeah. And I love that. I welcome it. I want to talk to everyone. Sometimes I've sat in the hallways for 6 to 8 hours just making sure I get to shake everybody's hand. And that's something I want to do, because the crazy part about this lifestyle is I can go home and then I go to like Trader Joe's or the, wherever I shop, and nobody knows who I am. Yeah. And I love that. So when I go to these events, that's my time to make sure that I speak to and shake hands with as many people as possible. But obviously, I got to also be conscious about the fact that there are so many of them, and that I could be there for days if I were to have one-on-one conversations with everybody. So I try to be friendly and make sure that people understand that there's this, that there are other people there, or that I have places to go. Every once in a while at some events, I speak to people who are working for the event to kind of say, hey, like, if I'm still here at this time, can you come and get me and just pull me aside just so I can, escape for a little bit? Because I am an introvert. And so that takes a lot of time and more so power and energy for me to do and stay focused. I love it. I get energized. I get high off of that. But then as soon as it's over, I go back to my hotel room and I just shrivel up and I just I'm under the blankets shivering. I'm like, what just happened? Because that's just not natural for me to do. But I try really hard because I want to give back to the amazing fans who are really what made all this happen. So, but yeah, and then, sometimes there'll be things on the schedule with some more closer friends or people in my network. And then if those things happen, I just am honest with people. I just, nobody's ever been mean when I say something like, hey guys, I got to go, but, let's chat on social media. And, that's the cool thing. Like, it's not the end. I mean, it's just not right now.
You mentioned that you're an introvert, but you do go out of your way to perform when I mean, I've seen several of your presentations, and you always seem to try to one-up yourself. So is that something that this business has brought out of you? This, or was it something you were doing before?
I think it's something I've always had, but now I have a platform to be able to do it. And I think now that I've been doing business on my own for a while, and I'm now like keynoting, and people are coming to ask me, I know that I have some freedom to just be creative again. I remember, back in, I think, 7th grade, we had this assignment in English class to do something unique with this list of 20 vocab words that we had. And some people created dioramas or other things. I created a video, and that video was me acting out each of those words in a really silly way, but in a similar way where it's just like I'm teaching, but I'm performing and I'm being myself. And so now I have this platform, these stages to be able to do that. And I'm just so thankful for that, because it really is the high point of my life outside of my family to be able to go on stage and perform, whether it's, method acting type things like I did at the 2015 podcast movement, or getting in a DeLorean and arriving on stage
that was awesome.
New Media Expo, which was, yes, absolutely awesome too. In 2014, I fell on stage on purpose at FinCon. Just again, like you said, I'm always trying to one up myself, try new things, and just experiment. Really, that's what it's all about. Some things go well, some things kind of fall flat, and I just pay attention to those things so I can incorporate what people like into the future ones that I do. And now that I'm getting more involved with Pete Vargas from Advance Your Reach, hopefully I'm going to get on even bigger stages in front of newer people and potentially, generate even more income from that. So it's kind of a win for everything.
One of the things you mentioned at Advance Your Reach was the fact that you had started to create different presentations every time you were going to appear somewhere because you thought you had to have something new every time.
Dude, nobody told me nothing about speaking. So when I first spoke, and then I started to get invited to speak again and again and again, I created unique presentations for each of those events because I was like, oh, I want to deliver the best that I can. I would ask questions like, who's in your audience, which I knew was a good thing to do. Yeah. And then I asked, well, what kinds of things would you want me to talk about, which was basically an open floor for them to just request anything they wanted. And I was okay with that. I thought that's how it was done. And then when I spoke to somebody who years later, after speaking, 15 or 16 times, a person asked me like, "Oh, what's your keynote speech?" And I said, "Oh, well, I have like 12 of them." And then this guy started laughing. I was like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "Well, that's crazy. Yeah. Like most professional speakers have 1, 2, maybe 3 tops that they do, and that's it. And they just do them over and over and over and over again, and they perfect them and they make them better. And that's what they get invited to speak for." And I'm like, "What? Like, I don't have to do a unique one every time." And so that's when I started to consider, okay, what were my top ones? Which ones can I do over and over and over again? And my most famous one, I guess you could say, or the one that most people have seen or have potentially seen me speak about was how to convert your casual audience into raving fans.
That's a good one.
And that one has been done several times. I would say close to a dozen times now. And it gets better every time, and I love it. And it never gets old. And it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I sort of liken it to a comedian, right? They're doing a routine and they just perfect it and see how timing on the jokes and how to present them.
So fun. Ways. The crazy thing is sometimes you'll say something and you won't expect it to be funny, but it's like the most hilarious thing because of just the room you're in or the people, and then you pay attention to that and then you include it again. You work on the timing of it, the delivery of it, the storytelling aspect, and then you just bring it home even more. I mean, there's so many moments like that I remember from my presentations that I always just make sure to include into future ones. And it just becomes such an amazing tool for you in the whole audience engagement factor. So, the more you can engage, the more you can make people laugh, the more you can make people cry. I've been making people cry a lot on stage, which is good. I mean, whenever you can get emotions like that out of your audience, it's sticking. And so that's important to me.
Yeah, one of the things I did learn from Pete was this idea of just connecting to, even if you just connect to one person and they're just like, oh man, that one line you said was really hit home. Obviously you want to make as big of an impact with everybody in the room, but I think sometimes you've probably had this experience with the 1 or 2 people that come up and say thank you, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really why I kept going. I mean, that first time I spoke in 2011, I was so scared. I had scripted everything I was going to say because I just wasn't sure if I was going to remember everything. It was just so bad. But then afterwards, a number of people came up and said, "I can't believe that was your first time," or "This was super helpful," or like, "Thank you, this is going to change everything for me." And so I was like, okay, I'm going to continue to do this because this is awesome.
I was doing a little bit of research because I was getting my speaker page lined up to do some speaking, and I was looking at yours. And one of the things that I thought was cool about what you do is you let the organizers know that you're going to be spending the whole time at the event, because a lot of times speakers, they just pop in, pop out, and I think. I don't know if you picked that up from someone, but I guess at some point you decided that was an important thing to do.
I mean, it's just something I do anyway, because I want to be at that conference and get to know people. I know the impact that could have to build those kinds of relationships and to have people see you. I mean, that's the thing. I didn't even know that was unique. I thought that's just what speakers do. Another thing that apparently I was crazy for doing, but it is something that I continue to do usually because conference owners have told me that is just... that's what people are talking about. Like, whoa, you were in there with them, talking to them. And that's not, for me, what has really helped me through the years is putting myself at the same level as my audience and not feeling like I'm any better or higher than them. So that's what I do. That's what I go to these conferences, I speak. And apparently it's something that speakers are willing to, pay for or give you something back for because they know how much and how valuable your time is. So, I'm thankful for that. And it's just something I love to do anyway. So that's cool.
And you recently had another YouTube video where you went through all your lanyards. And so
Yeah, gosh, there was like 2 or 3 dozen of them.
So as you think about like, you're like your journey, and obviously you're nowhere, who knows where you would say you are at the journey, but do you take time to look back, in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and do you do those every once in a while? You're like, whoa, it's been interesting to see how far I've come in that period of time.
I mean, there are instances where I go and I remember kind of where I came from. I think it's really important to do that. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you appreciative of just how far you've come. But it also inspires you because you just realize that you used to not know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you forget sometimes how far you've come. But a lot of times I don't think about that because I'm just so busy. So I'm thankful that I get to do interviews like this, because this is when typically, especially if I'm on a podcast like this, people will ask me about my story and how it all came to be. And that just alone, by telling that story, reminds me and allows me to get motivated again to kind of go through the process again, but start where I'm at now and see what the next journey is.
And that's where we learn additional tidbits about you, about the fact that you didn't dance at your prom.
No, didn't dance my prom.
Well, the irony is that like you love dancing, because you always, I mean, even in the Lisbon one, you did a little outtake at the end where you're dancing at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, I love to dance, and I didn't dance at prom because I was super shy and I didn't want to ask my date to dance, and she was super shy too. The crazy thing is I spoke at an event here in San Diego called Social Media Day, June 30th, 2017. And the speaking room, the ballroom, was the same room where I had prom.
Oh, yeah.
It just tripped me out. And so I did the opening keynote and I told that story. And I was like, guys, I'm already having a better time than the last time I was in this room. And so that was really cool, because it really made that's one of my favorite techniques when speaking, is just to kind of in the beginning put myself down in some way, shape, or form. It kind of, like I said, brings me to the same level as my audience. So you'll often see something related to me in the beginning of a talk that just allows me to be a little bit vulnerable. When I was at FinCon, it was falling on stage on purpose. The new media expo one in the DeLorean, I mean, that was just me being super geeky and admitting the fact that this show or this movie really like controlled my life. And then, other times I'll talk about my wife and how she pokes fun at me and showing off her Backstreet Boy collection and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a great technique, and I do that selfishly too, because it allows me to just relax. After those laughs, like what else could happen? Nothing. And so I just go, and then usually it just turns into a great presentation.
Do you remember the first time you did hit the dance floor?
When?
No, just the first time you actually went. Since you didn't dance the prom, do you remember the first time you actually hit the dance floor? Was it later at a high school dance or at a club somewhere?
So prom, that was senior year. The first time I had danced was 8th grade.
Okay.
And I remember because I was like super jealous of my friend who was like dating this girl who I had a crush on, and he was dancing with her at the school dance. And of course, at that age, you see all the girls on that side of the gym and then all the boys on this side of the gym. And then they were dancing, and I was just like getting super jealous. So I started the dance just on my own. And then like I invited some friends who are girls, friends of mine, to come dance too. And I just had a blast like that. I remember that was the first time, because the rest of the times, like 6th and 7th grade, I was just sitting on the bleachers.
Yeah.
Because that's what we all did. Like, who wants to dance at an event like that? So I grew some balls in the 8th grade, and then I didn't grow them in high school again.
Well, it's funny because as the guy that can dance, and you probably experienced this, like not a lot of guys can dance. And so like when you're the guy that can dance and there's a lot of women in the club, or you sort of get noticed. So, and from what I've seen, you've got some moves. So
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I was going to ask you a question as you grow your business. Is there someone that you currently have a relationship with, or had one in the past, that you would consider a mentor, or someone who's been consistently someone you've looked up to, or someone you've went to for advice?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give a shout out to my friend Chris Ducker. I mean, he and I are best friends, and he's somebody who has a ton more business experience than I do. And he and I have gotten on a chat almost every single week, and we both know each other's families very well. We're just so close now. But he is somebody who has sort of just, made sure to take care of me over the time in the way that he can. And I've been able to do the same thing for him. So to me, he is a mentor, but at the same time, he's a best friend. And I think that's so important to have somebody who's just in your corner, who knows your story, even more than just like a mastermind group where you connect weekly. But this is like a whole new level of connection. And in many industries, you see these kinds of connections happen with powerhouses that grow kind of together. I remember back when I started following blogs, this was even before I got laid off, they were two personal finance blogs that I followed. One was called Get Rich Slowly by a guy named JD Roth, and another one was called Simple Dollar by a guy named Trent. And he and JD were like best friends. You can tell because they were linking to each other all the time, and you just saw the massive growth that they both experienced together. And then I later found out that, well, they often hung out and talked, and it was because of that, and because they just trusted each other and shared what worked with each other, like they both were able to grow and mentor each other. So that's kind of what's happening with Chris and I.
Yeah, I've heard the story, on the podcast and how you guys connected, and it seems like, I think he calls you the brother from another mother.
He always says that. Yep. Yep.
So it's interesting to watch. A couple other questions as we wrap up. What have you changed your mind about recently?
Selling. I used to not like to or want to sell. Shalene has helped me through that a little bit. But even before that, I started to sell some courses, and there were some big mindset shifts related to being the CEO of my business and creating my own products versus just being a scrappy entrepreneur who is making money primarily through affiliate marketing, which has been the primary method I've been generating an income since 2009. I did sell my own product at first, but then quickly shifted over to affiliate marketing when I saw how lucrative that could be. But at the same time, I'm sharing profits, and at any moment in time, those business relationships with those affiliate products or affiliate companies could just go away, and then my money would be gone. So it's really important to have your own products to sell, and really, it's like what I said earlier: you can sell and serve at the same time, and that's not anything I believed in before, because I think based on previous events I've been to where I've been sold on stage, or just emails that I've been subscribed to, like, it doesn't seem like many people are trying to serve me by selling. They're trying to serve themselves first. And that's why I always take the approach of serve first. And part of that is actually, getting to a point where you can offer something that can help a person get deeper into something that they know and is going to really change their lives. And that's what my courses do. And that's what I'm excited to continue to provide in many different levels and many different access levels to me. So, that's the biggest thing, that it's okay to sell. And that changes everything, because then it changes your confidence. It changes your sales copy and just the tone of your emails, the tone of your voice in the sales pages, and then ultimately your sales. And so, as you begin to grow more confident with what it is that you're offering, so will your audience. And they will be more likely to take you up on your offers. And even if they do take you up on your offer, they're more likely to make sure they follow through with that stuff. Some people, you can give them that same information for free. They're not going to actually take that action. When you charge them, they're going to take that action and get those results. And I've been seeing those results. It's been super inspiring. And it's been giving me the confidence to actually send more emails, to sell, to be, quote, more aggressive. But that is not a bad thing. I almost feel like it is my responsibility to put those marketing tactics into place so that I can give this person a chance in this thing that I know they want to do. And those limiting beliefs, those, this is too expensive, or I don't think I could do that, or I'm not ready yet. Those are things that me as a mentor to these people have to do. I have to help them get over that and help them, take action. And the selling is a great way to do that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because it's a whole interesting relationship that people have with money and what they're willing to pay for services, and they think, I think of it as currency as current, and this exchange of, like, because if someone's willing to pay, it's because of your IP. It's all because of all the experience you've had over the years and everything you've put in, and that's what they're paying for. And if they feel like you're the person that can move them to the next step, I think they'll gladly pay. And I've had experiences, people have paid me a decent amount of money, and they're just, I've just have a great relationship with them, and they feel like you said, it's money well spent because they got value from every single thing that you did for them.
Yeah, for sure.
What's the most misunderstood thing about you?
I think it's that, I am doing everything on my own. I have this team behind me, but more importantly than that, it's just the support I have from my wife. My wife doesn't get much appreciation for the hard work that she does. So any chance I get to give her a shout out and thanks, I do, because she is definitely the most underrated player of Team Flynn with taking care of the kids, especially when I go and speak, but also just support. I mean, she's been supportive of day one. When we got engaged, I wasn't set off to be an entrepreneur. I was set off to be, a architect in this stable job. I had just gotten promoted. And then 3 months later, after proposing, I throw this whammy at her, like, hey, I'm not going to have a job anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she stuck with me. Yeah. And so through her support and through just what she's been able to do, she's been the one to help me get to this level. So I think that's the most understood thing, is just like not even realizing that is there. But she definitely is, and she deserves all the credit in the world for it.
I'm sure she'll be happy to hear that, and we'll tag her in the comments. So I know most people know they can reach you at smartpassiveincome.com, but is there a specific project you're working on now that you want to draw a little bit more attention to?
Yeah, I'm excited. Next week, actually, I'm launching another online course, and this one is actually 100% free.
Okay.
It's called Build Your Own Brand, BYOB for short. And what's cool about that, it's going to help people who have no website, no mark on the internet. It's going to help them get a website up with a theme that they can be proud of, something that looks great, something that is now their foundation for building that audience, something that allows them to understand how email marketing works in that whole ecosystem, and to do it in 5 days. And so it's a tall order, it's a tall task, but I know there are people out there who just need that hand-holding and that instruction to go through that process. And again, like I said, it's absolutely free, because I know that if I can provide this much value to people, that the rewards will come back in some way, shape, or form down the road, whether it's that person upgrading to one of my other courses, or sharing this course with somebody else who might purchase something down the road, or maybe get into sort of a coaching agreement with me. I don't know. But I just know that there's a big hole in the space right now to just give people every step they need to get something up and running. And this is something that I'm actually just so excited about, and it's going to be evergreen, and people will be able to get access to it at any time. And I'm building it in a way where it allows me to make sure things stay updated, because I have a video that was very popular on YouTube, almost 300,000 views, about how to set up your blog.
Yeah.
But it was that was created in 2009. It's completely changed. And so I wanted to give something more up to date. So for example, in one of the lessons, it's all about the WordPress plugins that you need to install on your website. Well, every video is one WordPress plugin in that particular lesson.
Okay.
So that allows me to either update just that one if I need to, or remove it if it gets out of date, or add a new one in. Like things like that allow me to make sure, and allow others to make sure that that is something that's going to be there for them, and it's the latest and greatest information. So that's at smartpassiveincome.com/BYOB.
Okay. And that's going to be a video course, you said?
It's going to be a course on Teachable, video with text and audio as well.
Okay. So we'll make sure we include that in the show notes.
Thanks.
Well, Pat, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on. It's been nice to get to know you a little bit at some of these live events.
Great questions. I love the conversation, and you're a good interviewer, so keep it up.
Well, I appreciate it, and thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely.
So it was a long time coming. Thank you so much, Pat Flynn, for coming on the show. It's so appreciated, and still brings a smile to my face that we were able to make that conversation happen. We are a proud member of Podcastica.com. Intro and outro music composed by Cedar and Soil, cedarsoil.com, for all his fantastic music. Tune in next week. We have a great conversation with Clay Groves. He's the host of Fish Nerds Fishing Podcast. That was a connection made at MapCon. That's a lot of fun. Clay is really this interesting character. He's done so many interesting things in his life, and it just makes sense that he would end up as a podcaster, because he's able to sort of pull all those skills together. And we talk about a lot of things, not just about fishing, but just what he's done that's led him to this point in his career. So that's really, really, really fun. Check that out. That's going to be episode 151. If you've made it this far, then even for our celebration episodes, we're going to have the retention hashtag. In honor of Pat's new foray into vlogging, we'll make it Vlog Pat. That's always an interesting word to pronounce. So it's VLOGPAT. That's going to be the hashtag. And tag Pat at Pat Flynn, PATFLYNN. And we are tagged at podcast_junkies. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to receive the weekly episode updates. If you haven't done so already, the easiest way to do that is just head on over to podcastjunkies.com/8tools. You can spell it or put the number in, 8tools, and download the free PDF of the tools I've used to launch Podcast Junkies. If you're already a member of the newsletter posse, then you know what the homework is. podcastjunkies.com/iTunes, and leave us an incredible 5-star review if you so desire. But the most important thing you can do is hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Have a fantastic week. Thanks again for this journey that we've been on together, and I'm looking forward to celebrating the next 150 with you.